Hi folks, G3 here and welcome to another instalment of my journey to go green. Today's episode is one of our regular catch-ups on what I've been doing in the garden. Things I'm covering this week will be recycling egg cartons in my compost bin, making sure there's fresh water and food for the birds, and tidying up my wildlife pond. The first thing I'm doing this week is making sure that the used egg cartons are put to good use, and I'm going to be putting them in the compost bin. Now these are the ones that are made from recycled card. Now these can always be returned to shops like farmers markets and the like for them to reuse. Equally, you can use them in your compost bin as part of the brown material that they need to get a good mix of ingredients within the compost. So that's things like the green waste, the food waste, and a little bit of brown waste, which this counts as. I've also got here the egg trays that have been used as packaging within some of the parcels that I've received recently. So they're also suitable to be used within the compost bin. And it's just a case of popping these in the bin and weighing them down with a little bit of additional material on top so they don't get blown away. Now I had some grass material that I'd bagged up that I had cut down from the front lawn last year. It's been decomposing a little bit and I'm going to use that to weigh this down. I've put the grass material in here, I've emptied that in. Now I've tried not to use too much because you've got to try and get a nice balance of the different materials in here. If you've got too much grass in there, then that will just it will impact the speed of the decomposition. One thing to note is that I'm wearing gloves because you never know what's been around in here, rodents and the like. So it's best to wear gloves just for to be safe. And it's a case of getting the material from the egg cartons and just placing it under a little bit of the grass here, and the same with these egg cartons. I don't usually bother to break them up too much because I've found that once they get moist they tend to break up reasonably well in here anyhow, and when I turn the compost bins over they naturally get turned in and it just all breaks down quite reasonably well. But if you're using a compost bin sort of like the Dalek type, you may well find that you need to break it up more because you don't have quite the same aeration in there, and it needs a little bit more help. I find it really useful to have these compost bins because I get a lot of natural waste from the plants that we're growing, and so those are going here, and also the food waste, so like the coffee grinds and the uncooked vegetables like the peelings and the like. And so I get a lot of compost through this that I can use on the garden, help restore the nourishment in there, and it's a really worthwhile thing. So that's one of the tasks I've done this week. Now on to the next one. Next up is making sure there's enough food and water for the birds in the garden. I'm going to be topping up the bird bath with some fresh water and also topping up the feeder where I've got some sunflower hearts for them. I make sure that I have water butts on my garden shed and on the greenhouse and down on the house as well, so that I can collect the rainwater to use during the season. And this is ideal for topping up the bird bath with. That's the water topped up in the bird bath. I tipped out the existing water before topping this up just to get rid of any messiness that was in there. It's also good to give these a bit of a scrub on occasion as well to get rid of the gunk and to wash it out so it's nice and clear for them, so that you're limiting the transmission of the diseases. And also what I did was I put a little brick in here to act as a bit of a step should any smaller birds get stuck in here. They're able then to sort of lift themselves out of the water or to perch on, just to make sure that they're safe. Next up, I need to top up the sunflower hearts in the feeder, so I'm going to go and do that now. Okay, so I've gone and topped up the sunflower hearts into the feeder. I get a sack of these to sort of get good value. Just need to make sure that they're stored well so that they don't deteriorate, keep them out of the moisture. And also one thing to bear in mind obviously is to make sure that this is nice and tidy when you're topping it up. Remove any food that's gone wet and mouldy, clean it out, make sure it's all nice and clear so that you're not transmitting diseases to other birds. Good hygiene. And what I'm using is just a little plant tie on here that I already have, just to keep that in place. The reason being is that the magpies had learned that they could come and sort of fly up and knock this and knock it off, and all the seed would disperse. So this just keeps it in and stops them from doing that, and the seed will last a lot longer. I've positioned it near the apple tree as well as being on the feeder, so the birds have a perch to land on when they're waiting for the feeder to be free, and when they're sort of checking the environment to see whether there's animals around that they need to avoid before coming and feeding. But they make good use of this. Right, so that's it. The water's topped up, the feed's topped up. Next on the list is tidying up the pond. I'm not going to do that today. It's a little bit cold and grey. I'm going to be doing that tomorrow, so hopefully that's going to be a little bit warmer. So on to cleaning up the pond. The final job that I'm doing this week is cleaning out the pond. I talked about this in the last gardening catch-up that I did, saying that I needed to clean out the pond to make sure there's not a lot of debris in there, so that it's not being broken down, and it will cause an imbalance in the water. It will sort of start taking some of the oxygen out and make it less habitable for wildlife. So I want to remove some of the debris. I've talked previously about the fact that it's good to leave some of the debris in the garden, such as the old plants. There might be seeds on them that the birds can eat over winter, or insects might be able to utilise the twigs, the stems. In this case, because it's over the pond, I'm going to remove that because it could be causing some debris. There is some gunk in here, so that's sort of the old pond weed that can be removed, some of the algae, dead leaves and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to give it a little trim. But what I am going to do is when I remove any debris from the pond, I'm just going to bring it to the edge, so that any creatures that are in there that I've disturbed will hopefully be able to get back into the water. Rather than going and putting this straight on the compost, I'll leave it here for a day or two to enable them to be able to do that before I go and put it on the compost bin. And what I am using for this are some rubber gloves. Now these are natural latex, they're eco-living gloves. I'll include a link down below to where you can find them. They are reusable natural latex gloves. They're ideal for cleaning, washing dishes, protecting the hands, and equally for when you're going in the pond. They are 100% vegan because they're made from plants. They're plastic free, reusable, renewable and sustainable. They're biodegradable and compostable. So a lot better than regular rubber gloves. They're a more sustainable alternative. And I'm putting these on because the water's going to be a bit chilly. I'm not expecting it to be warm. I think today is 5 or 6 degrees. So I can't imagine that the water's going to be that much more. Right, first things first, I'm going to trim this out the way. I'm using my secateurs. One thing to use here, I've got an old stick, it's one of my pea sticks, and I'm just going to use that to fish out the weeds from the water. And a bit of gunk, and I'm just going to be putting that on the side. This is the kind of thing, got dead leaves from this plant here, which I'll just snip, and they would just be deteriorating and making the water quality worse. A number of them I'm just able to pull off because they're dying, decaying. Reason for doing it at this time of year is I want to do it ahead of frogs and toads and newts potentially being in the area and wanting to spawn. I haven't had any spawn in the pond so far, but we do have frogs in the area, so there are some around. So fingers crossed one year that they will find this suitable to be spawning in, which is why I want to make sure that it's good for them from the off. And I'm just making a pile of the debris that's coming out here. Whilst it's very cold, these gloves are actually doing quite a good job of protecting me from that. So there we go, one cleaned out pond. It'll probably need another little clear up in a month's time maybe. I'll see, I'll keep an eye. It's a bit murky, so I just want to see how it's going to settle down. But most of the debris is now out of the way, so that won't be there to decompose. It should mean that the water should settle a bit quicker and have a little bit more oxygen in there hopefully, and that will encourage the wildlife. So that's what I've been working on over the last week. I've gone and put the egg cartons in the compost bin. I've also gone and made sure that the bird food and water is topped up and nice and clean. And finally, that other task that I've been meaning to do for quite some time, just give the pond a little bit of a tidy up. So there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that weekly catch up of what I've been doing in the garden. If you did, then please click the like button down below. And if you haven't done so already, then why not subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you get notified when I load up a new video. Well, until next time, bye.